Hey, what's up, guys? It's Billy from Steel City Collectibles here with our friend Brian Metzer from the Pittsburgh Penguins broadcasting team. Brian, thank you so much for joining us today. Building community is essential in the hobby nowadays. We've seen such a big transition from old forums to new school social media. How have you used social media to connect with other collectors and other people in the hobby?
Well, I'll just say this. I mean, I met so many cool people through social media in terms of being in the hobby. I mean, I think I told you this when we talked a while back, but I was a huge collector growing up. Collected a bunch of cards, collected a bunch of things, and still collect a lot of things now. But I got heavily back into cards in like the last 4, 5, 6 years, probably a little too heavy, more than my bank account would like. But the good thing is you can meet and your reach is so much more expanded via Twitter or X as they call it these days, Facebook, etc. When you get into certain groups or you get into the right circles on Twitter, I've met so many people that have stack sales and or just sell cards that you're looking for, and you can find things that you otherwise wouldn't have the ability to find. And it saves you from getting involved in like an auction or going to eBay or doing all these kinds of things. You might be able to just the fact I could see you put up something for sale as I've seen in the past with different things that you've been looking to move, and I can reach out to you that way and make an offer or just buy it for the price you had, and you wouldn't have that if not for social media. So I think that just brings people together, and ultimately that is what's a big part of this hobby of collecting whatever, be it sports memorabilia, be it trading cards, be it you know, Funko Pops. It doesn't matter. You can find somebody via social media now a lot easier than you would have before. You'd be at a flea market or you'd have to go to a show. Those would just be the only ways. And I'll tell you this, there's a lot of people that if you just went up to a table to talk to some individual at a card show or something, they're so overwhelmed in the moment, you might not even really get a chance to meet that guy or get to know him. Whereas if you're on Twitter interacting or on Facebook or X or something, then you get that opportunity to kind of go back and forth, exchange a couple messages, make a purchase from a guy, vouch for him next time when he's trying to sell. I mean, you build up a really good community, and you've also been able to weed out a lot of bad people and nefarious actors that way too. So I think that's really the reach of it, and finding things to save you from it. Yeah, people just love opening packs of cards, sure. But if you're looking for something specific, you could find it a lot easier that way now. Get it in your hands, it's in your collection, you have it, you have your new treasure, and you did it via social media. And I would say for the sports teams, it's allowed them to reach out to their fan bases in a much different way. I mean, you watch when Twitter came out in what, 08, 09, something like that, and now it's transitioned into today. I mean, the Penguins utilize it so much more than a lot of teams. I mean, everybody's really grown, but they reach out, they post giveaways, they can do things like that, interact with their fans, do scavenger hunts. You would have had to have an event to have people come to your facility or something to do it. And I think to watch sports teams and leagues just embrace that, have special card nights, do those kinds of things. They do it in a lot different way than they would have been able to without social media. So that's a long-winded way of saying I think it's really benefited the hobby and collectors, and just brings people and things together that might not have been able to otherwise if not for the social media platforms.
When it comes to your personal collection, what do you like to collect? Is it mostly Pittsburgh related, Pittsburgh sports guys, or is it a little bit of everything?
It kind of depends largely on my mood and what I'm getting sucked in on at the moment, which I think we all do. But generally, my collection tends to be Pittsburgh related. I do a lot of hockey in general, but Penguin stuff. I've collected Penguin stuff my entire life. I grew up a Penguins fan in Pittsburgh. Fell in love with the game at like 8 or 9 years old, and I often say Mario Lemieux, who we just mentioned, was the best salesman for the National Hockey League, and I was lucky enough to get into hockey just as he was breaking into his rookie year. And my dad was into hockey, so he that was like kind of our thing. And so I've been collecting Penguins since I was a kid. And I do collect some Steelers, some Pirates stuff. Not as much into those, but I have a lot of it. I collect Dan Marino stuff. I'm a Central Catholic grad, and it was always special to know he is a Central Catholic grad. And from the first moment that I was a freshman there, he was giving back to the school in every kind of way. And like the team would win a state championship, he bought them they bought special champion jackets. Dan Marino paid. He bought cleats for like the baseball team. Like, he would do all these kinds of things. He was like a really cool guy. So I've always collected Dan Marino stuff. Some other of the Central grads that made it. Like I have a couple Mark Bolger things that I think I just were cool because he was only a few years behind me in school, and that was kind of a neat thing. So that kind of stuff. I if there's some actors and things that I like, I try and grab, some of the Leaf stuff that they have that is out there floating around. Other icons, like I collect Mike Lang stuff, which falls under my Penguins love of the hobby in that way. And I'm trying to think of some other things. Like I have so many collections in general. It's not just cards. I have a ton of Funkos. I have a ton of. You can tell by the wall behind me. I mean, I got a bunch of crap on there that kind of speaks to some of the stuff I like. I probably had a 10,000 plus CD collection at one point in terms of music. I collect guitar picks from guitarists that I like, and many of them I've collected from being at the show and snagging it, as they throw them out. But I would say when it comes to cards specifically, I do focus a lot on the Penguins. If I'm getting into a box break, I'll look to get the Penguins. I collect Buffalo Sabres stuff to a certain extent. They were always a second team for me. I had some favorite players over the years. I would say Mogilny's up there. I have some stuff from him. I have some Hasek stuff, some LaFontaine stuff. But those were probably like the big three guys that I was collecting in that realm. Used to be a little bit of like Rob Ray, Brad May, tough guy. Barnaby when he was around there, I collected, and then he became a Penguin. So it's like it's funny because one of my favorite players growing up too was Rick Tocchet, even as a Flyer. So I know people are rolling their eyes when they hear that. I loved it. And then when he came to Pittsburgh, it was so cool because then you didn't have to hide the fact that you were rooting for that guy anymore. So but I collect Rick Tocchet stuff, always have. Brendan Shanahan's a huge favorite player of mine, always has been. So I collect his stuff. I have a pretty extensive hockey jersey collection as well, which I've stopped buying those over the years, but they were more geared towards Penguin stuff. But I had a couple Sabres things. I had Shanahan, Detroit Red Wings jerseys. I had a Whalers jersey from Shanahan at one point, and that was a short-lived one. He was only there for part of a season until he forced himself out of there and went to the Rangers. So that's kind of where my stuff falls. It's very hockey heavy, but it's funny if you saw like my room that I keep all this stuff. It's hard to even walk into sometimes because I have cards everywhere, I have books everywhere. I have CD cases everywhere. I have Funkos. I have action figures. I'm sitting here talking to you with Fox Mulder. Here he is. Here he is. My Funko of Fox. I have a Jason Voorhees to my right. I have a lot of Star Wars stuff. I collect the Star Wars cards too, and that's huge these days. There's so many cool products coming out for that. So, again, long-winded way of saying I collect a little bit of everything, but it is very Pittsburgh centric. And I've started over the years. Even though I loved him as a player and I thought he was a really cool guy, working with Colby Armstrong over the past few years, I started collecting Colby cards just because it's cool to kind of collect cards of somebody that you get to call a friend and work with too. So I thought that was kind of a neat thing. And you may have seen him when I posted him on Twitter. Of my Mike Lang stuff, I always thought that was cool to have those memorabilia cards that Alan and Ginter did with pieces of Mikey's yellow legal pad in there. I collect as many of those I could get my hands on. I have, I think, 3 of them now. So it's pretty cool to just do that kind of stuff. But yeah, so it's a little bit of everything, but it's very Pittsburgh heavy, Central Catholic heavy a little bit with some of those guys. But I would say the biggest there is the Dan Marino stuff. So you're crossing Pitt, Miami Dolphins, and then anything that they put out now still. So I've never seen a Dan in a Central jersey on a card, though. I hope that would be nice to see if they would ever go back that far. But I think the only ones I've been able to find are Dan and Pitt gear.
What would you say are some of the best cards in your collection?
I can't remember if I got my hands on it when we talked, but I have acquired one since our interview for sure. If I didn't have it yet, because it was sometime last summer I got it, and I believe we did our chat on air like sometime early spring last year, if I'm not mistaken. But yeah, I got a Sid Young gun now, so it's definitely high on my list. It was just like an item I wanted for a long time. When you say only, it's still a nice card. It's like an 8.5, and I got a great deal on eBay, and I couldn't pass it up. I finally got it, so that's one of my favorite items. I would say I have a Lemieux rookie as well that's graded. It's not a great grade, but it's funny. A couple years ago, the same day that I had you on Madden, I had Steve Mears on, and I had him on to talk cards because, believe it or not, Mears, he's a big collector,
Mm.
and he mentioned that his newest Grail that he got his hands on was a Lemieux rookie card, and his was, I think, a better graded card than mine, so he paid a little bit more, but I still, that was something I always wanted, and I'll never forget, right in one of the fledgling days of eBay, I had one in an auction that I won the card, and I forget, there was some breakdown of communication between us because it wasn't like PayPal at the time yet, and it was like, I forget how we had to pay, and I was dumb, and I lost track of the guy, and the guy lost track of me, and I lost out on getting the card for like $100 or something because this was way years ago, and it wasn't graded or anything. Well, forget all that. I got one now finally, and I think it was the guy on Twitter, and I'll just throw him out there because you probably are familiar with him. Um, Dan Vincent. He does his stack sales with hockey stuff on Twitter. Awesome stuff. Great sales all the time. That he just does. An individual guy just sells his cards, and I bought that from him for a pretty good price. And so that's one of my favorite items as well. I have my Geno Young Gun card too, because I would say when I'm telling you about my collection before, when I said Penguins, I'm really heavy on Evgeny Malkin. I have a lot of Geno stuff, and so getting the Geno Young Gun was important to me, and it's a graded card as well. That one's actually, I think, a 9 that I have. So I mean, it's not mint, but I mean, it's pretty good. So that's one of my favorites. I have a Shawn Michaels on card auto that I just, it's not graded or anything, but it's just a cool card to have. The fact that it's HBK, and I have that. And trying to think if there's, I mean, I have so many things. I could go on for hours here, Billy, with all the stuff that I love in my collection because it's, I mean, I have like signed Misfits posters that I got from one time actually seeing the show in Newark a few years ago that's hanging in my office. But I have a couple more that I bought from a guy that is kind of a handler slash photographer for Glenn Danzig. And he sells a lot of the extra posters then once the tours are over. So I have some other Misfits ones. They're like all like prized possessions of mine because they're signed by Glenn. Some are signed by Jerry Only of the Misfits as well. So that's pretty cool. But in terms of cards, those are the ones that I really have at the top of my list. It goes on and on. I mean, this is the problem with me. I have so much stuff, and I don't know if you do this. I sometimes forget what I have. I mean, like the top stuff. But there are times I'll be like, man, I really got to clean this place up. And I start like looking through a box of cards, and I'm like, why do I just have this sitting in here? It's going to get like destroyed. I mean, it's in a sleeve or something, or it's in a, it's not just loose, but at the same time, I'm like, I'm going to damage this, and it's probably worth money, a nice chunk of change, and it's just like thrown in this box. And that happens to me all the time because I'll get it, the package arrives, or I'll buy it and I'll set it aside. And I'm like, okay, I got to get in here and put this away, and then I lose track of it. And that's one of these days. I should have you over to help me go through cards so you can say, yeah, get rid of these. You don't want these. Make sure these are safe and do that. But I've learned enough over the years to know what I have, but I forget sometimes. So, but those are the things that have bubbled to the top right away when you ask me that question, though.
It's so much fun to discover pieces from your collection, like something you may have forgotten you even have, you come across and you get excited all over again. Now, trading cards have certainly changed over the past several decades. We've talked about cards going all the way back to the 80s with the Mario Lemieux rookies. What have been some of your favorite technological advancements, or how do you think trading cards nowadays are better than they used to be even 5, 10, or 15 years ago?
Yeah, you go back to the junk wax era, as they always call it, which I hate that in a way because I have a lot of cool stuff that I like from the 90s, but it was overproduced and everything, as we know. But for me, I think just the way they do autos now, I don't, a lot of people hate stick on auto compared to on card. I mean, yeah, on card's better. It's still a player's autograph on a cool card half the time, regardless of what it is. So for me, I just think the way that they've done cards now with the patches and the way that they can do that kind of stuff, where you get like a really nice thick patch with 3 Keller, and you can get like either a number or you get part of the logo, or you get the greatest one where you get like the Buffalo Saber logo with the eyeball of the buffalo or something right in the card and an auto, and it's like super thick. You could have never done that before. I mean, it was always just like, flimsy cardboard. You had to be extra careful with it. You still do, but I just mean they hold up a little bit better. They can still be damaged easily, but I think in that way, just the way you've gone from, I remember when they introduced Top Stadium Club originally, like back in 1990, whatever, and we were so impressed. And even Upper Deck's first hockey cards, they were so beautiful compared to just like the old Topps or O-Pee-Chee stuff, because they were glossy and they would have hand drawn artwork, or you'd get like those portrait shots, and that was so beautiful. And now I think you've just taken that through the roof, the way that they've done that kind of stuff, and the different sorts of relic that can go in a card now. You can get a piece of a stick, or and I know that was something you had mentioned in one of the questions to me, like as an example. But I think that's so cool to get a piece of a skate or something in a hockey card. I mean, how could you wouldn't even thought of that even 15 years ago or something? And now it's commonplace to do those kinds of things. So I think that, and then just getting into the beauty of them with the refractors and all the cool different things, and the rare ones, and getting zebra print and tiger stripes and all this kind of stuff. Just the way they design the cards now is just so much more beyond where it ever was in the past.
With the season just a few weeks away, is there anything fans should be keeping an eye out for?
Yeah, I just think it's going to be an exciting season in Pittsburgh. I'm still waiting to find out all my duties. I mean, I know I'm going back and doing my job like always. It's just a matter of who I'm going to be working with for sure, and what I'm going to be doing. But we'll be doing the intermission reports, post-game shows, pre-game shows. I'm sure we're going to be doing our Saturday morning show, which is Penguins Live Weekly, that is on Saturdays on the X. So tune in for that. But generally, Eric Carlson being here, Riley Smith, all the other signings coming on board. It's going to be a new look Pittsburgh Penguins team. Really looking forward to seeing them in action. Training camp kicking off, in a week, next Thursday. So that's going to be a blast. And I'm looking forward to just being a small part of the coverage to bring that to all the listeners that you get and all the listeners that we get. It's a big part of my year to be able to do that. I get a thrill out of delivering the news and information and all that kind of stuff.
Brian, thank you so much for joining us today.
Yeah, you're a good guy. So thanks for doing this with me. And anytime you need anything on this end too, you just hit me up. I'm always willing to make time for you or do whatever you guys need. It's a pleasure to help.
You're the best, Brian. We hope to have you on again real soon.
Thanks, Billy. I appreciate it, man. Take care.
Fans, that was Brian Metzer from the Pittsburgh Penguins broadcasting team. Don't forget that Steel City Collectibles is your one-stop shop for all things trading cards, including the newest, latest, and greatest hockey card releases. Until next time, we'll see you soon.